A 5-year manhunt. The North Carolina mountains, ground zero for the largest, most expensive fugitive search in United States history.
For 2 years, we have worked ceaselessly to solve these heinous crimes.
One man versus the power of the United States government. Multiple bombings in 2 states. 3 dead and more than 100 hurt. It all started and ended in a small Carolina town at the hands of one of the most dangerous men to ever walk the streets of Murphy, North Carolina.
A part of western North Carolina was literally a hidden minefield. And indeed, had we not entered these plea agreements, Eric Rudolph might have ended up killing more people after he was imprisoned or executed than he ever did when he was free.
This is the story of the capture of Eric Robert Rudolph.
25 years ago, pipe bombs exploded inside the Centennial Olympic Park in Atlanta. The blast killed 2 people and brought to a halt the 1996 Olympics.
The plotting, the planning, the bombs, all built right here in North Carolina. As Fox 46 chief investigator Jody Barr found out, there was a chance that the Atlanta bomber might have never been identified.
Eric Rudolph spent nearly 7 years a free man after traveling 2 hours from Murphy, North Carolina to Atlanta to bomb the 1996 Olympics. He spent most of the time after that here on the run. Although Rudolph's capture by this dumpster and the investigations ended nearly 20 years ago, there's still debate raging over whether someone helped Eric Rudolph.
There was no cars in the parking lot. Flipped on my alley light here, came around the corner, and bam. Saw him right there.
Jeffrey Postel wasn't practicing any extraordinary police work. He thought he'd simply caught someone trying to break in to this grocery store.
I observed the silhouette of individual kind of crouched down, kind of in a sneaky looking mode, walking towards the rear of the Save-A-Lot grocery store and fled to the rear of the grocery store here. He hid in behind the milk crates and stayed there until after a few moments of me giving him commands to come out.
Postel says the man told officers he'd hitchhiked from Ohio and ended up in Murphy.
He gave me the name of Jerry Wilson with the date of birth, and he came back with no match, no record on file, so that kind of raised the red flag.
Postel took the man to the station to dig deeper into his story.
The sheriff's deputy that had arrived pulled me off to the side and says, you know, he really has an uncanny resemblance to Eric Rudolph. And I said, do you really think so? Because probably like anyone else, I would have never imagined that this would be Eric Robert Rudolph.
Jeffrey Postel was 16 when Rudolph bombed the 1996 Olympics. He went on to join a nearby police department as an explorer. Over the next few years, he watched more than 200 federal agents flood into Murphy on the hunt for a serial bomber, a fugitive with $1 million reward for his capture.
So I had really had a front row seat to one of the largest manhunts in U.S. history as a teenager.
Postel was 21 years old with 10 months experience on the streets when he caught the man behind the Murphy Save-A-Lot. Back at the station, he pulled up the FBI's most wanted list and printed the Rudolph wanted poster.
I started out with hair color, check. Eye colors, check. Height, check. Until I get down to noticeable scars. And Eric Rudolph's description had a scar to his chin. And I remember very, very clearly, he was in a chair with his hands behind his back, handcuffed, and he was staring at the ceiling. And the scar on his chin was glaring right at me. And I remember all 4 of us going into the room where he was at, and we took the FBI wanted poster and we held it up behind his head. And we're kind of looking back and forth, all of us in like a U shape around him, kind of looking and going back and forth. Tell us who you are. And he said, what's the paper say? And we all said, that's not the question. Tell us who you really are. After just a moment, he looked up and says, I'm Eric Robert Rudolph, and you've got me.
The arrest ended the 5-year manhunt in the same town Rudolph built the Olympics bombs, the bombs he planted outside an Atlanta nightclub, and the 2 bombs detonated outside this Atlanta abortion clinic. This was the world's first look at Eric Rudolph, just hours after Postel captured him in May 2003. His appearance fuels a debate still unsettled nearly 20 years later. Did he look like someone who had just spent 5.5 years in the mountains?
He certainly did not look like that he had been living on his own for a very long period of time. He was he had a little bit of stubble growth on his face. His hair was cut short, almost like a buzz cut. But I do think that it's hard to believe that he would not have had some help along the way.
Rudolph told his side of the story in this 2013 The Memoirs of a Militant. He claims he survived alone without help. He'd kill wild game, eat salamanders, and fish from the rivers in the mountains, even dumpster diving for food. He stole grain from these silos outside of town and to store at his campsites, tucked away in the mountains outside Murphy.
Past that sign.
Rudolph admits he also stole from this garden along Airport Road.
And it's a 3-cornered piece of land.
That garden belongs to Gene Webb.
People said that Rudolph's in your garden. So I don't know whether he was or not. He probably was.
But you notice somebody was out there.
Yeah, somebody was stealing.
Could a man spend 5 years living off the land without help out here?
A lot of people had garden back then. I mean, just about everybody. But look at the population now. It's over double, triple. Houses everywhere.
Probably couldn't pull that off today.
Be hard.
I am convinced that he didn't get help from anywhere. The reason I'm convinced is because as much as people up there many people up there sympathized with him, there was $1 million offered for his capture or information leading to his capture.
Richard Jaffe was one of Eric Rudolph's federal attorneys. After years of investigation, the feds never charged anyone with helping Eric Rudolph.
When the FBI comes and pressures people, as they are supposed to do, to try to get people to help them find a fugitive.
And tell the truth.
And tell the truth, exactly. And they never identified one person that helped him.
Between 1996 and 97, 4 bombs exploded across Atlanta. In the next 18 months, the government still did not have a suspect.
We will spare no effort to find out who was responsible for this murderous act. We will track them down. We will bring them to justice.
After Atlanta, Rudolph slipped back into his life in North Carolina, plotting his next attack.
Another abortion clinic, this one in Birmingham, Alabama.
That attack happened in January 1998, the 24th anniversary of Roe versus Wade. Rudolph planted a bomb outside this Birmingham abortion clinic. 2 witnesses spotted a man walking away from the blast as others ran toward it. Those men followed their suspect.
Jermaine is able to get up beside him, and he takes a piece of paper and writes down the tag number of the gray pickup truck.
That man scurried off and hopped into a gray truck and sped away toward North Carolina.
A gray pickup truck registered in his name was seen near the clinic right after the explosion.
Rudolph dumped the truck in the Nantahala forest and went on the run. That truck was the first break investigators got, tying Eric Rudolph to any of the bombings. Had Eric Rudolph never came to Birmingham and hit the switch on that bomb, the likelihood that he ever would have been caught, what do you think that would have been?
Never would have happened.
Rudolph was the only person charged in the bombing investigations. Despite that, Jaffe believes Rudolph might have gotten help carrying out those bombings. You're not convinced, though, that Eric Rudolph was able to build a bomb in Murphy, to drive it here, scout the spot, plan it, sit back and wait. You don't think he acted alone, do you?
I do not think that anyone could have done this alone. I just don't see it.
Rudolph's memoir explains how he did it. He traveled to Birmingham a month before the bombing and sat on this ridge overlooking the city and the abortion clinic and picked the spot where he'd detonate the bomb. Rudolph disguised the pipe bomb as a plant and placed it outside the clinic's door. From a few blocks away, he watched as an off-duty city police officer spotted the bomb when the officer leaned over to get a closer look. Rudolph hit the switch. He killed the officer and gravely injured a clinic nurse.
He would actually sit at the top of this ridge line and watch and take note of how often, how frequent the patrols would come through.
So Rudolph was watching you?
Absolutely.
In his final months on the run, Rudolph stalked the Save-A-Lot, noting delivery schedules and Jeffrey Postel's patrol habits. Rudolph wrote that he'd wait for Postel to pass, then cross this field toward the dumpster inside the red zone, looking for food, until that one night in Murphy, when his time ran out. Eric Rudolph pleaded guilty to each of the bombings but dodged the death penalty. He had one live bomb and 250 pounds of explosives buried in the mountains here. He agreed to tell the government where it all was in exchange for life sentences. He's currently serving multiple life sentences at a federal supermax in Colorado. The only time Eric Rudolph will ever see the outside of a prison again is when he dies. In Murphy, North Carolina, Jody Barr, Fox 46 investigates.